Hello and welcome to Generative Geeks. My name is Vaibhav Pandey, and today I'm excited to bring to you a beginner to pro series on pandas. This is the first episode, but we'll cover pandas right from the start till the pro version, right? So my goal is to take a complete novice, turn them into a pro as far as pandas is concerned. And pandas, as you know, is a popular library when it comes to data analysis. A lot of work that we do at our workplace involves pandas, and I'm hoping that this will be a very useful tutorial series for you. What we'll do in today's video is that we'll be diving into the essentials of loading and inspecting data with pandas. I'll take a CSV file, an Airbnb CSV file, which is available on Kaggle. Take that, then convert it into a data frame. We'll load that CSV into a data frame using pandas, and we'll inspect the data frame, right? In future videos within this series, we are then going to build up from there. We're going to do a lot more analysis on this data frame, and I'm sure that you will learn a lot, sharpen your skills as the videos go from the beginner to the pro end of pandas, right? Let's get started. So what we'll do is we'll first get started with downloading the data. For that, you should head over to the link in the description and download the data set. Right. Once you have downloaded the data set, you will get a zip file. Unzip that and bring it onto your Visual Source Code, Visual Studio, or maybe if you are using Colab or any other environment, bring the file here. I have the file here. This is our regular file, right? If you see, it has ID, name, host ID, all of that. And what I have also done is I've created a requirements.txt, because we'll make use of an external library called pandas, and the series is all about pandas. So I have in my requirements.txt a pandas file. Right, next what we want to do is we want to create a new environment. Right, so create environment, it'll be a VM environment. I'll use existing environments or delete. I already have an environment, so I'm just deleting. You can actually create a new one, Python 3.12, and we'll say install this requirements.txt. So it's going to install these requirements.txt, and you can see that the process is going on. Next, what I'll do is I'll come back to my Python notebook, and I'll say, so once you have your Airbnb.csv, now the file won't be called Airbnb.csv, it's some Airbnb open data.csv, something like that. I have renamed it for readability purposes, and brought it into my working directory, right? So you should do the same. Once you are here, what we'll do is we'll say import pandas as PD. So pandas is already installed. If you go to terminal and you see VN, that means our virtual environment is ready. So I'll just do a pip freeze to show you what all libraries are installed. So you can see pandas is already installed. Pandas has a dependency on NumPy, so NumPy is also installed, and some other libraries which probably had a dependency on pandas had a dependency on are all installed, right? So we'll not get into that. So we will now get started with importing pandas, right? So, and the way you import pandas is you say import pandas as PD. That has been the nomenclature. This PD can be anything. You can import it as P, and that will also work, right? But the standard nomenclature has been that import pandas as PD. Once the pandas import is done, our next step is reading the CSV file using the read underscore CSV method, right? So the read underscore CSV method, if you go to Google Chrome and you say pd.read underscore CSV, and you read the documentation quickly, you will see that it returns, it takes a CSV file and it takes a file and it returns back a data frame, right? So read a comma separated file into a data frame, so it will return back a data frame, and there are tons of input parameters that you can give. We are going to make use of few of them, and I'll show you which ones as we move along, right? So coming back to our coding window, we'll say df is equal to pd.read.csv, um, and we'll give the name. Ours is called airbnb.csv, and we'll just read this file, right? So once it's read, df stands for data frame. That's like the standard nomenclature. You will find if you read pandas code, a lot of people use df. That's basically data frame, right? Next, let's just quickly look at the top five rows of the data, right? So we'll say print df dot head. I'll not do a print because print somehow in the notebook messes it up. So I'll use df dot head, and you can see the first five rows are now listed. Yeah. So these are the column headers: ID, name, host ID, and all of that. If you want to now look at quickly the top, the five last rows, you will say df dot tail, right? So and it'll give you the first last five rows, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if you just want to look at the last 10 rows, you can say df dot tail 10, and it'll give you the last 10 rows, right? So and here you see that here 10 rows and 26 columns are printed, right? So this is how you do df dot head and df dot tail. I'll just remove the 10 and we'll stick with the top five, with the five as a default. So five is default, right? So now let's just say if you want to figure out that, hey, which are the various columns that have got imported. So the way to do it is, or let's just say, what is the total count of rows and columns. So there are 102,000 rows, 102,599 rows, and 26 columns that have been imported as part of this data set. And you can also look at some information just by doing df.info. And sorry, I had to call the method, and it will tell you that, hey, this is a data frame, and it has these many entries, and the data columns, there are 26 data columns, and for each column then it goes on and tells you how many rows of data it has, right? So and you will see not every row has 102,599 values, right? There are some rows which don't have a name, there are rows which don't have a, also everything has a host ID, but there are many rows which don't have host name, right? So similarly you will see a lot of rows don't have, like, house rules. Very few rows have house rules, right? So very few entries have house rules. You can even do a df.describe. It gives you a lot of interesting it gives you a lot of interesting statistical measures about each column, right? So if you look at ID, it is telling you these many counts of IDs are there, this is the mean. Like, ID probably has no sense, but if this was someone's salary, like, employee salary, right? It could have, the mean might have made sense. What is the standard deviation? What is the construction year, right? So if you look at it, the mean construction year is 2012, right? And the minimum construction year is 2003. The max construction year is 2022, right? So it gives you a lot of interesting statistics if you do a df.describe. Now if you look at it, there are a lot of rows, right? When we imported this data set, 26 columns got imported. There can be a situation where you'll say, hey, you know what, I don't want all these columns. And in that case, when you come back to the pandas documentation, you see a use calls here. These are the columns. If you only want selective columns to get imported, selective columns, right? And this is also one thing that we want to do. We want to selectively import data by passing column names, right? If you want to do like a selective column, that, hey, I only want ID, I want a host ID, I want the country, and that is it, right? You can say, hey, calls is equal to, and create a list, and you can say, I want a ID, I want to import the host ID, I want to import the name, I want to import country, and I want to maybe import some construction year or something like that, right? So I want to import this construction year. So you create this list. This becomes the columns that we want to now import, and we are saying, hey, df is now not just pd.read csv. I'm also giving it that, hey, only import these columns, right? And we'll then do a df.head, and you will see some error has happened. It seems use calls do not match columns expected but not found, host underscore id. Maybe host underscore id is not the right column name. It's host id, host space id, right? So you have to be sure that the name of the column matches what it is there in the file, right? And once you do this, now it has imported, and we got only these five columns, right? So we got the id, we got the name, we got host id, country, and construction year, right? And if you look at it, construction year is getting read. It should have been probably a string, or but it's getting read as a float, right? So we are not getting into that right now, right? Maybe in a future video we'll talk about it. And if you see this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, these are basically the index values. So if you see a df.index, you will see that it's a range which starts from 0 and stops at 102,599 with each step equal to 1, right? So it has still imported all the 102 599 rows, but only the 5 columns. And if you do a df.info, you will see you will see df.info. uh, you will see that only these columns have got imported, and not all columns have all the values, right? uh, so next, what we'll do is, we have done the selective import, we have done the read csv, we have done the selective import, we have done a head and tail. Now let's just say we want to change the index, right? So the index that we are seeing, which is basically range index, but we also notice that the host ids are all non-empty and all are there. Now it's up to us whether we want to pick host id or we want to pick id, right? For the purposes of this video, I can pick id, right? Because probably Airbnb has this id, which is nothing but an index, right? And the way to go do that is come back again to this read csv documentation, look through it, and you will see that there is an index underscore call, right? Which basically means, if you again do a Google search on this, what is index underscore call, it will tell you columns to use as row labels denoted either by column labels or column indices, right? So it is telling you that, hey, which column has to be used as a row label, right? Which is what is basically the index, right? And the way we'll do it is, we'll say, hey, use id as index, right? So we'll say df is equal to pd dot read underscore csv, and same way, but this time what we are saying is that the index call has to be id, right? So we'll again read this data frame, and we'll now say df dot head, and you will notice that the id is not written in the same way that it was written earlier. If you look at the earlier print, id and name were column labels, right? But now if you look at it, id is no more a column label. If you just do a df dot columns, which basically tells you which all columns are available, you won't see an id column in this. There are only, there's a name, host id, country, construction, so there are only 4 columns now. And if you do a df dot shape, you will see that it has only 4 columns there. So and now let's just quickly see which is the index, and you will say this is now the index is id, and it has these many lengths. So, and these are the index values, right? So this video kind of helps you understand how to quickly import data using pandas. And then once you have imported, how do you bring it into a shape where it is now ready for further transformations and manipulations, right? So if you now do a df.head, you can see that, hey, id is all available as and if you want to do a lookup on ids, it's all easy to do it. You might want to say, hey, you know what, wherever the id is 1001 254 and 1002 I want to pick only those rows, right? And which I'm going to talk about in the next video very shortly. How do you do that, right? So today's video, we just took a data frame, we took a csv file, we imported the csv file, and we first created our environment, we imported the csv file, we went through the data, we inspected the data, and now we have a data frame where we also did some manipulation. We imported only specific columns, not the entire set, maybe the only columns of interest for us. And we also changed the index, right? We could have as well said that, hey, the index has to be host underscore id, and here we should have then said host id, right? Let me just show you, right? So if I say df is equal to pd.read csv, my index is host id, right? So if you do a columns, it is now importing id, but it is no more importing host id, right? So this is how you basically take a data set and quickly bring it into a shape where you can now do more manipulations on it. Hope you like this video and learned something interesting. And that's a wrap for today. I hope you found these tips and the entire process of loading CSV, converting it into a data frame, then inspecting data with pandas useful. If you found it useful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Mine is a very new channel, and I humbly request that if you found anything valuable in the video, do like, comment, and subscribe. If there's anything that you did not understand or you want more explanation, please leave a comment, and I'll be very quick to answer whatever are your challenges, right? Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and keep geeking out with pandas.